availability of communication on a wide is as many people as we can communicate with, right? I mean, it's just that's what oneness is all about, right?
Yep.
The one mind.
There's just one of us pretending to be mucho mini.
Yep. I was just thinking about that this morning too, how we're doing that. And it is pretty it is pretty spectacular, but it's uh not hard to imagine that uh God's son would have tremendous creative power, and even such a miscreation as this is, it's still pretty amazing. You got to pat yourself on the back for that. But anyway,
Our minds are pretty powerful.
excuse me. Yeah,
So shall I give the usual intro
yeah,
here? Okay.
absolutely. Please do.
This is Lynn Johnson and Bruce Rawles. We're reading from Absence from Felicity, the story of Helen Schuckman and her scribing of A Course in Miracles by Kenneth Wapnick, PhD. And we've just finished chapter 13. So now we're about to embark on chapter 14, which in the print version I have, which is one of the earlier printings, it starts on page 387. Your mileage may vary if you have a print version. And on Lynn's digital version, which she's sharing on the screen, we're on page 373 of 492, or 75%. So it's taken us, let's see, a year and was it a year and 3/4 to go through 3/4 of the book, give or take.
Exactly. Oh,
Yeah.
but it says over here that we only have 12 hours and 14 minutes left.
So if we read fast, which we're never likely to do,
Oh
we could
my
finish it
gosh.
in a few weeks.
Yeah, well, I tell you, it's been so good for me.
Oh, yeah.
I think even after, like we've talked about many times, reading it a long time ago when I have my original copy of it here, and I read it and I was fascinated with it, but since I've been studying the course and I know a lot more about the Course in Miracles, and now it's beyond fascination. It's like, wow. I've learned so much, um, not just about Helen and Bill and Ken, but about what Jesus was actually saying. And not to change the subject here, but did you see that thing I sent you that from Carol Howe?
Um, Possibly. A lot of
Tell me
stuff
not.
crosses my path.
Okay, so
Probably, but I've been skimming a lot of things lately. I don't know why, but so
um,
I'll go back and look for it.
I did want to bring this up because I wanted to talk to you about it real quickly, really
Uh-huh.
quickly.
Okay.
Oh man, because I had to reboot my own computer, now I have to go look for it. Um, anyway, it is at some point, um, uh, Ken asked, and you may know about this. At some point, Ken asked um, Helen to ask Jesus, was there a physical resurrection? And I want this open. And the answer he gave is pretty astounding. I just got to put it that way. Pretty astounding. And I know I can go find it where I sent it to you in the email. Hang on
Okay.
just a second. Of course, I don't have my email open over here. Let's see. Sorry about this.
Well, while you're looking for that, maybe I could just make a little uh, sort of an announcement, I guess.
Sure.
On acimblog.com, I posted a number of things recently, but my favorite interview of in recent moment times is one I had with Jeff Seibert, who gave us a really nice tour of Ken's metaphysical chart, and in the span of about 35 minutes. And if anybody is interested in that, they can go to acimblog.com, and I think that should be, if not on the top of the blog posts, pretty close to it. And there's a picture of Jeff there, and also Ken's the short version of Ken's metaphysical chart, which is so helpful.
Very cool. I
Yeah.
love that. So, and I love Jeff. He's a great teacher.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay, so this is Carol Howe, Alan Ishak. I believe you know him. Um, I may not be pronouncing
Did
his last name correctly, but
did he do the documentary and of a whole bunch of different course folks?
yeah, and he's helping
Eh,
Carol with her autobiography.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
he's
think yeah.
amazing. He's just an amazing guy. So um, let's see. So he has been working with Carol on her autobiography. So she had told him about this or given him this. Not sure exactly how it came about. However, um, he had a video of her, and this is the transcript from the video because she couldn't be at the meeting on Sunday, the Easter meeting. So this is the transcript from that video. Um, so this is Carol saying, "Hey there, everyone. Happy Easter, happy spring. Hope you're having a happy life. I've been asked to read this to you. This is a document that goes back to October 2nd, 1976, at the very, very beginning days of the course coming out into the world. I guess the course had already been published. And Ken asked the question, and here is the answer he got. The question was there a physical resurrection? And here you go. This is Jesus talking about his resurrection. My body disappeared because I had no illusion about it. The last one had gone. It was laid in the tomb because there was nothing left to bury. It did not disintegrate because the unreal cannot die. It merely becomes what it always was, and and that is what rolling the stone away means. The body disappears and no longer hides what lies beyond. It merely ceases to interfere with vision. To roll the stone away is to see beyond the tomb, beyond death, and to understand the body's nothingness. What is understood as nothing must disappear. I did assume a human form with human attributes afterwards to speak to those who were to prove the body's worthlessness to the world. This has been much misunderstood. I came to tell them that death is an illusion, and the mind that made the body can make another, since form itself is an illusion. They did not understand, but now I talk to you and give you the same message. The death of an illusion means nothing. It disappears when you awaken and decide to dream no more, and you still do have the power to make this decision, as I did. God holds out his hand to his son to help him rise and return to him. I can help because the world is illusion, and I have overcome the world. Look past the tomb, the body, the illusion. Have faith in nothing but the Spirit and the guidance God gives you. He could not have created the body because it is a limit. He must have created the Spirit because it is immortal. Can those who are created like him be limited? The body is the symbol of the world. Leave it behind. It cannot enter heaven, but I can take you there anytime you choose. Together we can watch the world disappear and its symbols vanish as it does so. And then, and then I cannot speak of that. A body cannot stay without illusions, and the last one to be overcome is death. This is the message of the crucifixion. There is no order of difficulty in miracles. This is the message of the resurrection. Illusions are illusions. Truth is truth. Illusions vanish. Only truth remains. These lessons needed to be taught but once, for when the stone of death is rolled away, what can be seen except an empty tomb? And that is what you see who follow me into the sunlight and away from death, past all illusions, on to heaven's gate, where God will come himself to take you home.
Mhm. That's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah.
And
So,
then,
I mean, like the Course says, that we've never been in a body except in our dreams. And so, what can the birth of an illusion or the death of an illusion mean except to a dreamer, right?
yeah, yeah, and it's, I mean, he does say this in the course. He says, the name of Jesus is the name of one who saw the face of Christ, and everyone he saw, and he remembered God, and then he remained in the form of a man, an illusion, so that he could communicate with people. So that and we saw him as a man because we saw, just as we're looking at each other as human,
Mhm.
but it's all illusions. So, and I love that because I had just done a meditation right before this, and had, well, I did the meditation on the Sunday meeting, that was experiencing the tomb with Jesus. And so, in that experience of in being in the tomb with Jesus, the body does disappear, and that was the experience that I had, and that I walked through in the meditation, to just be there in the silence and allow the body to just be no longer. And then, we stood up and looked, and the burial cloths were on the ground, and the body was gone, which is exactly what happened. They looked in there, the stone was open. They looked in there, and the cloths were on the ground. He was gone because the body had disappeared, because it wasn't really there at all. Uh, which I just thought that was just so beautiful. Anyway, I thought you'd be interested in that. I send you a
Yeah,
copy.
that is, it is. And it kind of, I think, aligns with my sense of what inspired the Baird Spalding books over a century ago, century and a quarter, give or take. And
Wow.
I remember reading those in the late 60s and early 70s and being very um, inspired by the ideas in them. And the more sensational part was that the people that were described in this series of books were hundreds of years old and didn't appear to age, and they could teleport and do all kinds of things that would be considered, magical, paranormal, whatever. But that their emphasis was not on that. It was on, you have to remember that, we're spirit, we're part of God, and if we try to use anything um, to try to make the dream real, we're missing the whole point. And once we've overcome the limitations of the ego thought system, we truly are unlimited. But then, what would be the point of hanging out in a world that was designed to be a limitation, at some point? But we have a gradual process of going, as Ken Wapnick liked to say, we go peace before long before we go poof. Um, but what difference does it make whether we appear to be in a body or not, or appear to be in a healthy body, or appear to be in a sick or dying body? It's like, well,
Yeah, it doesn't
and
matter.
having said that, I mean, I try to do all of the normal things, and eat the things that I think make my body healthier, and avoid the things that don't. And I walk about 100 miles a month, and go take a yoga class, and do my doctor's and dental and whatever appointments and chiropractic, all that stuff. It's like, why not do all that stuff?
Right,
But
right.
but but
Yeah.
when we make a big deal out of it, that's when I think we're missing the whole point of things, and I think that comes across in that that little short essay of
Yeah.
Carol's. Yeah.
Yeah, it was that, yeah, and yeah, it's recognizing that this body is just a vehicle. It is a communication device.
Right.
That's really all it is. It's a vehicle. And it's something that uh we choose every bit of it
Yeah.
as well. And we choose the form in order for to be able to do the communication we're here to communicate. So, we may choose a form that is, is mentally ill or has a physical ailment or, maybe perfectly healthy and beautiful, but, incapable of having empathy or, there's all sorts of forms that we choose in order to communicate and to learn the lessons that we're here to learn. And so, there's not a good body or a bad body or a healthy body or a sick body, or the fact is there is no body at all.
Yeah.
It is a projection that we are doing on a level that we don't even recognize. We don't experience ourselves on the level that we're actually projecting the body, but we can experience ourselves on that level. And that was what Jesus did. He experienced himself on the level of being absolutely able to manipulate or to create an illusion, whatever illusion he wanted to create. So if he wanted to create an illusion that water was now wine, or that you could walk on water, or you could he would just appear in a room without ever going through the door. Just he would just be there in the middle of the room, and people would like, "Where did you come from?"
Well, and but then, yeah, again, it was I think I try to remind myself that in those Baird Spalding books, which had, ample examples of things like that, that
Yes.
but would be akin to, wow, let's go to Las Vegas and watch this really great magic show. Um, and that sort of spectacle. I found the quote that the course doesn't talk about spectacles as eyeglasses, but but, but the ego's distorted vision would have us believe that changing the form is a big deal, where the real miracle is changing the thought system.
Yeah.
And that's, I put the quote in the chat, the very first chapter of the text. Miracle principle number 10: the use of miracles as spectacles to induce belief is a misunderstanding of their purpose. So I just have to remember that if I'm trying to make the big deal about, what happens or doesn't happen in the world, I've totally missed the point of the course.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, of course, uh, people might find it astonishing if they were prone to find it astonishing. Other people might find it was just absolutely ordinary and not even think about it.
Hmm.
Uh, so, but Jesus didn't do those things in order to impress anybody.
Right, right.
I mean, he just did that because for whatever purpose, I don't even know. Uh, uh,
And so much of that is speculation and the old telephone game of you tell something to someone and have them tell it to someone else, and by the time you've gone through a dozen people, the odds of it being significantly distorted from what you originally said are pretty high. and
yeah,
and you multiply
absolutely.
that by 2 millennia plus now, and it's like, okay, um, the odds are pretty good that we've got a bridge distorted and otherwise crazy
Right.
version of what may have happened on the level of a dream, which is again kind of missing the point.
Exactly, because the whole point is to look at, what was the purpose of it, not that Jesus wanted people at the party to get drunk, um, because they were already doing that without his his help. Um, so what other reason could that have been? And so that's what you have to just, what is the actual purpose? What really happened here?
Yeah.
Not
So, Yeah, I think it's very helpful for me anyway to consider anything between the two covers of what, you know, what version I have around here somewhere is the King James Bible is basically allegorical and heavily modified from, you know, reality, even if what we think of as physical reality, if there's, which is itself an oxymoron. But if I can just remember that you know, these stories were written down and filtered heavily, you know, edited and modified over the years in order to uh, position a particular political and you know, message.
Yeah.
And the, the whole premise really, if you look at the Bible, I've been listening to Ken's when virtue is a vice and vice is a virtue,
Mhm.
and he's spent about the last hour or two, and I know he's spent many other you know, lengthy segments talking about how, you know, the Course is not the third testament of the Bible, and the foundations of the two books are completely antithetical to each other, because the Bible basically uh, insists and asserts that God had something to do with the world right from the very beginning, and takes an active interest in what we do and don't do on the level of form and behavior. And the Course says, you know, very emphatically, you know, that in so many different ways that God has nothing to do. You know, perfect oneness has nothing to do with duality. God has nothing to do with the world. So if we want to work with a thought system that um, you know, enforces that idea, then it's going to be incompatible with the Course, and we're just going to end up confused. Um, and you know, so another, Ken suggests that you would be better off finding a system that works for us, that's either purely non-dualistic or not. And the Course's metaphysics is a pure non-dual metaphysical system. So
Yeah.
that's also why it's so challenging, because there's, you know, we have split minds, that part of our mind, the ego mind, really would love to try to make duality work. And so that's the part that puts up the fight against everything the Course says, even if it's mostly unconscious in terms of the resistance.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And the whole thing being we choose what we want at any moment.
Yeah.
And so, it, it's so easy to say, well, this is, I couldn't help myself, or this just happened, or I just came into this, I just started thinking about this and then my mind ran away with me or whatever. We're choosing at every time what it
Yeah.
is that we want to see.
Hmm.
And that's simplifies things for me tremendously. So okay. So oh,
Should we
this is gonna
start
be
in
fun.
chapter
Yeah.
14?
Yeah, you want
Okay.
to read this
Sure.
is gonna be
Sure. Okay.
fun.
So chapter 14 begins with other scribe, the title, which is Other Scribings. Um, and then an A, I guess there's other sections. And then a subtitle of subheadings are Notes on Sound, Psychotherapy, Clarification of Terms, the Song of Prayer, and Special Messages. Ken begins his commentary with Helen's relationship with Jesus was not limited solely to scribing A Course in Miracles. As the earlier chapters have demonstrated, her relationship with him extended throughout her lifetime and became more intimate and personal in the weeks preceding the actual beginning of the Course's dictation. It continued on for several more years after the completion of the scribing. Nor was A Course in Miracles the only material Jesus dictated to Helen, though it was by far the most extensive. The sole exceptions to these dictations is the quote notes on sound unquote, which is discussed below. In this chapter, I discuss these other scribings chronologically, leaving for the following chapter the poetry, which constitutes, as it were, a special case, insofar as Helen was more personally involved with the dictation. So another subheading, Notes on Sound, 1972, 1977. In October 1972, which is when I just had gone to college as a freshman, Relatively soon after the scribing of A Course in Miracles was completed, Bill began to develop an interest in Kirlian photography. And just about the time I did too, synchronistically. This was the Russian technique for photographing auras, the electromagnetic field around living things. He asked Helen to ask whether this was an important area to explore. A question from Bill thus once again acted as a stimulus for Helen, but this time with a totally different result. With Helen being clear that the source of the writing was not Jesus. The answer to Bill's question was essentially no, light was not the important phenomena, sound was. What followed was a highly technical treatise on the building of a device that could measure the physical effects of healing, not an actual healing device, as has been sometimes mistakenly believed. This device operated under principles that converted light waves to sound waves. The dictation continued for about 2 months and consisted of 27 pages. It was, as was the case with A Course in Miracles, there was no way Helen could have written these, quote, notes on sound, unquote, as we have called this document. However, unlike the Course, as we shall see in chapter 17, the, quote, notes, unquote, contained a subject matter that was totally alien to Helen's ego. Helen would not even have known how to change a light bulb, let alone understand something as sophisticated and complicated as this device. Scientists who later saw the document were quite impressed, especially with statements such as, quote, this is an aspect of the alignment of metals that is not yet known, unquote. The statement turned out to have been true. Several years after Helen had written this down, the unknown aspect was understood. It was also clear, however, that the information was not complete. Many scientists have attempted to construct this device, but to no avail. There is simply not enough information. In 1977, some interested people prevailed on Helen to write down some more. Helen was most reluctant, but did try to comply, and April eked out another page, 2 pages or so. But this too was not sufficient, and all subsequent efforts to have her complete the monograph failed. The quote notes on sound unquote, like Schubert's Great Symphony, remains unfinished. Where did it come from? Except for one brief passage to be quoted below, the tone of the notes, in quotes, is obviously quite different from the Course and Helen's other scribe material, not to mention its content. A Course in Miracles is quite clear, for example, that healing is only of the mind and has nothing whatsoever to do with the body, and yet here is a machine whose purpose is to measure the healing of the body. Bill had the theory, which he once mentioned to me, that the source of the material might well have been Helen's father, a brilliant metallurgist while he was alive. Helen's relationship with her father had never been healed, and as I mentioned in chapter 1, she always resented her father's detached and almost ruthlessly, at least from her perspective, objective fairness. It thus made sense that on another level, their joining together in this dictation would be an expression of forgiveness. I waited for quite some time before approaching Helen with this thought, as I knew her feelings toward her father. One day, however, I felt the timing was right, and I was pleasantly surprised by Helen's almost matter-of-fact receptivity to the theory, for she thought too that it made sense, and perhaps it was true after all. Well, interesting. Would you like to pick up from there?
Yeah, I'm interested because, all right, he said before this, you started reading this, right? That it was clear that the source of the writing was not Jesus. Helen was clear that the source of this thing came from something that was not Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so yeah, I mean, I had not thought about that. I do know people who are scribes who get material from like a couple of different sources, like Jesus and Mary or uh, the angel Raphael or whatever, whatever they call it. It's another source of information that they get or whatever. but I never thought about Helen hearing more than one voice, I guess. Um, I just think and when I had heard about these notes on sound, well, I know I read this before, and
Me
so
too,
I
at least a
knew,
decade
yeah,
ago.
but it never occurred to me that those notes on sound came from someone other than Jesus. So, just interesting.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a good point, and noteworthy uh, to point that out. Yeah, very much. Yeah, well,
yeah,
I think to me that's basically saying, okay, if Jesus is a symbol for a pure non-ego presence, then anything less or different than that would have to be something that's still trying to fix the dream. And so there's a part of Helen's mind that, you call it Irving Schmidlap or any name you want to throw at it. Doesn't really matter.
Irving.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So that's really very interesting, um, because I do think that there is communication with other, even though it's the not knowing that there is no other, and yet we get communication from other. Well, where is that other coming from? Well, it's in our own mind. It's
right.
there. I mean, Jesus is in our own mind.
Yeah,
That's when I get used to the knowing that the knowing of God comes from within because that's where God is, then I will have a different experience. I do
yeah,
have a different experience when I look at things that way.
yeah.
So
And we're all channeling all the time, right? Like right now, um, for the last half hour or so, I've been hearing a voice in my head, and I call it Lynn Johnson.
yep, and you
And
have a
I
point.
happen to respect that voice quite a bit, and look forward to hearing that voice in my head on Saturday mornings.
I was thinking about that. I mean, now this is how and I love you, Bruce. This is how the ego is like, because I go on your channel and I've been listening to and playing some of your interviews with people and talks with different people and everything, and I'm always like, oh my gosh, and he comes and talks to me on Saturday mornings. I feel so special.
Well, none of us are special. That was his whole
I know.
whole message. All of my children are special. Right?
I know,
Yeah, yeah.
but I just love it, and it just makes me so happy, uh, uh, well, because you're another voice in my head that's saying I love you.
Well, yeah, yeah. And and
Yeah,
and if we're paying attention, even if it doesn't appear that way, if we can look through the facade of everyone we meet or think about, the same love is there. The same perfect, undiluted, untarnished, unblemished, whatever, unmodified eternal love is there in every being. And I think that's the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, that it's all the judgments that we have, it's all the condemning thoughts and the niggling little, oh, I wish they would do this or not do that, or be this way or not be that way. um whether it's a person we live with or person we see on the news, it's like that's our classroom, right?
that's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
And that's our person that we made up.
yeah, yeah,
That's what I have to keep reminding myself. Oh, I made that. I put that there. The only way that it's going to ever go away or change or be any different is if I change my mind about what it is that I'm seeing here.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's but it's so easy to get caught up in the, oh yeah, but you can't let this go. You got to hold on to this. This is something that's really scary, necessary. You got to fix this. That's how we get caught up into somehow or the other thinking that fight or flight mode. I've got to do something, and again, I need do nothing except not to interfere. That has become my watchword now, because really that's it. I'm not here to go into fear about this. I'm here to see the love in it. And so I know, however crazy something seems to be, knowing that it's here in my mind. I put that there, the purpose being to distract my attention from the truth, and that, you know, the mask that the person is wearing is just a mask, and not only can it be removed, it doesn't even exist. I made it up.
Mhm.
I put that false nose on that witch, you know.
Yeah,
I always think
I'm visualizing that. Was it a Monty Python skit?
that's how I always that's how
That's
I always
good.
think about it.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's such a funny sketch. It's like you throw a fake nose on the passerby. It's like, "Witch, burned at the stake, please."
Yes, that's
Whatever,
right.
whatever this. I'm paraphrasing
Yeah, they were
that skit.
dunking her.
Yeah,
They were
right,
gonna
right,
drown her.
right.
Which is, I
Yeah,
mean, just, but
witches,
that is,
witches
yeah,
don't float or something like that. I was like,
yeah.
that was just a silly Monty Python skit. Yeah, I think that's
Very
what it was anyway.
silly. That's what I think every time whenever I look at any of these characters in the dream that I have you know, made into some kind of monster. I'm the
Hmm.
one that that put that on them.
Exactly, exactly. And where does that cast of characters? They're in my mind, outside of space and time.
Yeah,
They may appear to inhabit a brain that is in a body that I seem to have identified with a really bizarre world where things seem to be separate. But they all those characters, all 8.2 billion humans on this planet, and whatever it is, they exist in my mind. And
exactly,
fortunately, I don't
exactly.
have to deal with them all at once on a daily basis, but they're
But they're
they're
all
all there.
here.
They're all there
Um,
here,
uh,
wherever
here.
that here is. Yeah.
That's right. It just reminded me, and I don't know if you did you ever read The River World, Philip
I guess
Jose
not. I
Farmer?
guess not. No.
Oh my goodness, the River World. You should look it up. It's pretty cool. It's
Yeah.
a just an amazing. It's science fiction,
Okay.
and the basis of the story is a some advanced civilization was building a highway, sort of like you know, the Hitchhiker's Guide, but they were doing something and they accidentally destroyed the Earth. And in order, because they couldn't have, you know, they couldn't do that. That was like against their laws or rules or principles or whatever. They decided that they had to remake the earth that had been already. But since they didn't know anything about it, they reintroduced every human who ever lived. This huge world
Hmm.
with every human, Shakespeare's there, and you know, Gandhi's there. I mean, everybody who's ever lived is in this world, this river world. It's very interesting, but that's how I
Sounds
envision
like
him.
Douglas Adams meets Steve Allen.
Yeah, yeah, kind of like that. But yeah, you should. It's Philip
Is
Jose.
that the River World and Other Explorations by Bertrand Ruche? Am I pronouncing their name right?
Mm,
1978?
no,
No?
it's
Okay.
Philip Jose Farmer.
Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay. Maybe it's, oh, there it is. I see. Okay.
yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
Okay.
And I mean, that to me is heaven, right? Is when everybody who ever was, not just 8 billion of us, but you know, all the billions and billions of, because it's all the characters uh in the play in my mind are all there. So anyway, so Helen's dad is here, and he's still in her mind and never left. And
Hmm.
so because she invented him, uh, she would absolutely know everything that he knew about metallurgy and other such things. So the theory that that might be her dad, I can understand. And she could, that she would accept that makes perfect sense. I mean, she's used to having conversations with other people in her mind and acknowledging that they're there.
Hmm.
So.
Hmm.
So anyway, I'm going to continue on with reading.
Okay.
That was an interesting little interlude there. Okay. As I mentioned above, there is nothing in the material to suggest that the scribe of A Course in Miracles took it down, except for this very atypical passage from the document. And this is the passage. The patient may, however, develop other symptoms, since physical healing represents a realignment of essentially local, that is, bodily forces, rather than the total context in the mind itself. This is because they still occur in time, and therefore retain the illusory quality of time itself. It does not matter in what part of the body the healing takes place, nor by what means it is brought about. From the theoretical point of view, it can be said that healing can only be the result of a change of mind, which now accepts healing where it formerly accepted sickness. The change of mind alters the thought field around the patient, which seems to represent the place where he is. These changes cannot be different for a healing presumably brought about by medication, surgery, or faith. Healing can only be faith healing, for sickness can only be faith in sickness. Wow.
Well, there's a testament to the psychosomatic nature of bodily conditions. I mean, we think we inhabit a body, and that is predicated on our mind's ability to project. So, within a dualistic context, right? So, um, we kind of stand to reason that what we're doing with that dualistic mind is creating a dualistic body. And the fact that I think, well, I find it helpful to remember that since we made the world as an attack on perfect oneness, that it's intrinsically finite, which is why I think why the idea of death and mortality are intrinsic to the ego thought system, because it knows that it's working on borrowed time, borrowed space, borrowed mind, borrowed everything,
Yeah.
ultimately. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet,
So, wow.
yeah. And the unconscious guilt is we think we've stolen that from perfect oneness. And yet the Course reminds us that the perfect oneness that is our real identity that we all share has never been impacted by our dreams of thievery. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's ridiculous to think that it could be. I mean, if you stop to consider the nature of God, it seems impossible that a world could have been created that could be so frail, so um, so easily broken, and that's absolutely true because there is no world. It is a story, just as that thing about Jesus and his body. You
mhm,
know, it just disappeared because he was not holding it anymore. As long as he was holding it in the illusion, it remained in the illusion. But when he stopped holding it in the illusion, and let it go, it vanished because it it, it was only there because he was projecting it. And that is how we are too. That's how we are too. That don't even imagine that that's not true. We're projecting these forms from a level that we cannot control at this moment because we're convinced that we are the form. And
mhm,
and you can't, reach back into the mind and change the mind from the form. But the mind can remember that it is, in fact, not the form, and then become aware of the truth of what it is. That's what happened with Jesus. That's what happened with Buddha. That's what happened. This is what happens when uh, we just stop believing in the illusion of the world.
mhm.
So this is it's just so clear, and then of course frustrating, excuse me, because it doesn't seem like I'm in control. Anyway, okay, so let's see, where are we at here? Okay,
Just that last paragraph before the next section.
okay. Sorry, I shouldn't be talking so much. Um,
That's what we're here for.
yeah, exactly. Uh, okay, it would seem that here, as Helen later agreed, she had tuned into Jesus for this brief passage so that students of A Course in Miracles would not be led astray by the quote notes, sojourn into the far country of the body. So, uh, again, it was all Helen.
Mhm,
This is what we don't get. It's all here in your own mind. But the problem and the answer are all right here in your own mind.
mhm,
And so, yeah, being, first off, uh, if she thought it was not right, okay, if she thought that, this whole channeling thing about the sound and the body and the healing and all that business, if she thought that that was something that came from elsewhere other than Jesus and was not uh, uh, quote unquote holy, uh, then why did she keep it? Why didn't she just say, well, that's nonsense, and I don't want to
Well,
get people tripped up, so let's just throw that out.
I think that's a great example of, how we all tend to do the level confusion game with ourselves and say, well, I need to, you go live on a mountaintop or in a cave or something and renounce the world, have the ascetic life because everything of having to do with form is illusion, and therefore, then we make this leap to saying, well, it's evil. Well, if it's an illusion, it's nothing. So how could nothing be good or bad? But thinking makes it so, as Shakespeare said. And then, of course, mirrors that in so many other places by saying, the level of confusion is thinking that the world affects the mind, but it's really the mind that we're aiming to completely transform by forgiving all of our thoughts that attach ourselves to the dream and the projection mechanism of the dream, which is the ego, which is also made up. So if I can just remember to keep steering my mind with Holy Spirit's help through the prison of the outer shield of oblivion of every specific thing that then can become my classroom, and then beyond that through the ego's you know thought system of separation, sickness, difference, duality, denial, death, condemnations, sin, guilt, fear, attack, anger, grief. I'm reading a list off the little chart I have on the wall, and through that whole insanity back to the decision maker, and notice that that whole thought system and its projection onto the world is made up. And there's nothing intrinsically wrong with an illusion, and it's nothing the course suggests that using the magic is evil, sinful, or wicked. It's just silly, only to the extent that we believe that that's going to make us peaceful consistently, because there's nothing consistent about magic. It's always based on an ever-shifting landscape. That Yeah, the phrase that came to mind the other day is like we're basically, when we listen to the ego, which is constantly gerrymandering the political landscape of our mind. um, it's always a moving target for trying to attempt to find peace in a world where one day someone's a friend, the next they're an enemy, and we redraw the political boundaries of what we like and what we don't like on so many different levels and in so many different dimensions that it's staggering and dizzying to try to keep up with it. But there's a peace, the course calls, the center of the storm, the quiet the quiet center of the cyclone, that we can go to anytime we want, and just watch our mind for when we want to be out and engaged in battle, and just say, well, I could be above the battleground. I could be, like the astronauts in the space station, looking down on all the storms and seeing all these little white spirals around, covering parts of continents. that sometimes are tiny and sometimes they're huge, but it doesn't matter from that quiet place that we just look and wait and judge not, huh?
Exactly, exactly. And speaking of that quiet place up above all that, I was reading the other day about William Shatner, his experience when he went up into space. Um, and uh, he said he hated it. It was terrifying. He thought it was horrible. He realized how very fragile our life is in the earth and how small and how grand, how great, large everything is. And I was really, really
Beam me
surprised.
down, Scotty.
I know.
That's funny.
It was
Yeah.
really
So much
interesting.
for the brave facade, huh?
Exactly. And, then,
That is
Katy Perry
hilarious.
and
Yeah.
her little group went up in there and they were in 11 minutes in orbit or whatever, wherever they were. Um,
Who is this? Sorry, I missed it.
Katy Perry,
Oh, okay, okay,
the women that went up,
okay.
whatever the purpose of all that was, I don't know, but it
Publicity,
just
maybe?
yeah, yeah, there you go. But yeah, uh I was listening to the reason I'm still talking because we have about 8 minutes. You want to get started with the next section
Oh,
because I don't
we
have
could
to read
just
on
chat for a
it.
few more minutes and then
Okay.
I'll put my marker there where we left off.
Okay, good.
Good stopping point.
Um yeah, so because I want to really pay attention here. But um so then I forgot what I was just gonna say.
Oh, you're talking about Katy Perry and some others going up in the space shuttle,
Going up into this, yeah, into
or
space.
was it the
Oh,
space shuttle? Or
oh,
was it with one of those planes that gives you like it's a better part of a minute of zero gravity?
yeah, no, but they were up for 11 minutes, so they actually,
Oh, okay.
you'll have to look it up.
Oh, okay, okay.
It did make big news, so.
Oh, okay.
Um, but the reason I was mentioning it was because yesterday I was listening to Buddha at the Gas Pump with Rick Archer, with Sebastian Blakesley that did the Choose Only Love and um, Age of the Heart and those other books.
Okay.
Anyway, so Sebastian was explaining to him, that everything was within us and that Jesus is within us and that it all is it's we all have it within. And then Rick Archer started going on about yeah, but there's trillions and trillions of stars and trillions of this and trillions of universes and all these there could be that and do they have their own Jesus and do they have their own Buddha? And he's asking all these questions and I'm like laughing. I'm like, what part of it's all within do you not get there? uh, because it's so easy to think that there's some huge thing out there, but there's no huge thing out anywhere.
Hmm.
That's all the dream. And it's all being projected from the thought that I am something outside of God. And the fact is, I'm something inside of God. I'm a part of God. My mind is very holy, as the lesson teaches us. Um, there's nothing about there is no separate world out there.
Hmm.
Um, and
There is no
that's I
world.
think,
This is the central thought the course attempts to teach, right?
yeah, yeah. So, and even, people who are into non-duality and have, that whole non-dual philosophy going on, um, unless they have they're at some point self-realized, like, I think maybe Rupert Spira, there may be a few who have, recognized that it is all within, and that's all they tell you is it's all within you. And people keep saying, well, can you point to me where that is? Uh, anyway.
Non-local.
Oh my goodness. Uh, and I did send you that
Oh, yes,
in
I did find it.
okay. I want to
Pardon me.
find recording. Well, I'd like for Alan to send me that recording so that we can play it and actually see Carol and hear her reading it. Um, but I know that you know Carol and have spoken with her many times, so probably probably be interested to hear that. It's
Yeah.
like that.
Well, actually, I've met Carol once, and that was at the Utah event that was the David Hoffmeister's organization put on for Foundation for Inner Peace, and that was a decade ago almost. It's quite a while ago now. So at least
Oh,
at
it's
least
been a
at least 5 or 6 years
while.
ago.
I
Yeah, yeah,
remember that. Yeah,
yeah. And then and I had a conversation with her via Zoom of maybe 3 years ago, something like that, give or take. Yeah, right after
yeah,
she moved back to the Denver area. Not long after.
exactly. And I had
Yeah,
seen that. So
yeah, yeah.
you talk to everybody, so I love that.
Well, I enjoyed conversing with other course folks because everyone's has a unique contribution, and I obviously tend to emphasize people that are studied with Ken Wapnick and find just because I find his work so carefully and closely aligned to the course's pure non-dual metaphysics. So it's like people that resonate with that tend to resonate with what the course seems to say. So what I could tell.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
But then that's my opinion as well.
yeah.
And not, that, I think everybody else is, full of crap. I don't because I
No, no.
recognize,
Well, obviously, if we do, then we're missing the whole point of the course, right?
right, we're missing the whole point of the course.
In fact, just went. I know we've only got about a minute left, but speaking of Star Trek and Kirk, I was reminded the other day of what I think probably my favorite episode is the one that Frank Gorshin was in the original three
Oh yeah,
seasons. I think it's called "Let This Be Your Last Battleground," and where the Enterprise circles this planet, and there's only two people left after this enormous civil war. They beam them up to the Enterprise, and they're still chasing each other through the halls of the Enterprise, and trying to kill each other. And finally, at the end of the episode, they end up on the bridge, and with Kirk and his crew there, and they ask, them, why are you still fighting? You're the only two people left of your civilization. And then they say, well, can't you see? Are you blind? And what you don't you kind of miss, because it's a lot of chase scenes through and everything, is one's black on one side, one's white on the other. But then when they stand next to each other, you realize that they're like mirror images of each other, because the character that Frank Gorshin played was black on one side and white on the other, and the other character's name escapes, the actor's name escapes me, was white on one side and black on the other side, the opposite, and that was the only difference. And I thought, boy, what a great metaphor for the absurdity of trivial dualistic distinctions. But it's also, to me, like a symbol of everyone's got a right mind and everyone's got a wrong mind. Not that the colors are necessarily a great symbol for that, but anyway. So thank you, Lynn, as always. I'm off to another meeting in about 10 seconds, and I
all
wish everyone
right.
a very peaceful week and look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you, Bruce. I